Our next topic is permaculture design. Permaculture is a word that came from just a word made up by Bill Mollison and David Holmgren in the 1970s, and it comes from permanent agriculture. So it was a system by which one could um, design and implement usually talking about a small kind of farm system. So a small farm that could be that can be used permanently, meaning it's done in a sustainable manner. Most of the energy for the site comes from on site. The water resources mostly are stored and kept on site. It produces food to support humans and livestock. You can grow crops there. It's done in a way that also doesn't exclude natural species, native and wild species from using the site, and it's doesn't produce much waste. So it is back to kind of like subsistence type of living, but in a way that is very sustainable and ecologically based, and in that sense, economic too. So that's just a real quick definition of permaculture. It's based a lot on indigenous knowledge, so it kind of is a tie into our last lecture from Native American horticulture. But in the 1970s, Bill Mollison worked at a university in Australia. He's Australian, and he got tired of the ivory tower, which is the academic system of just of theories and concepts, but not really a lot of practical information. And he wanted to step out of that system, and he did. And he started studying all of these indigenous systems of land care. So the cultures that have been living in a place for a long time had learned to live with the land in a sustainable manner, and that is kind of just goes goes with living in a place for a long time. When you can't get a lot of inputs, can't bring a lot of stuff in, you have to use what you've got, and you have to use it in a way that's conservative, that allows for it to be continue to produce for you and provide for you year in, year out. So that's really all indigenous based design means, is designing off of tried and true older systems that last and don't use a lot of resources. One of the key elements of permaculture design is it's based on observation and experience of a landscape. So permaculture designers will look at a site, like you could take a small farm, it could be your house, the property your house is on, um, even a condo or an apartment has the possibility to implement some permaculture design principles. But let's just take like a small, I like to talk about like a 3 bedroom ranch house, in Goleta, just kind of a typical home around our region and lots of regions. Um, but the designer would want to spend a lot of time on the site, as much time as possible, just observing the landscape, observing where is the sun go during the morning, noon, night, where's the shady part, where's the wet spots, where's the low spots, where's the high spots in the land. A lot of observation and just watching, kind of understanding kind of what's already going on there ecologically. Where does the wind come from in the winter or in the summer? Where does it tend to get hottest? Which side of the house gets really hot and which side stays cooler and shady? And all of those things of taking your time to observe the land allows you to design a system that works with um, those dynamics. So you're planting plants in the area that gets a lot of sun and gets really hot. Plants that can handle that and don't need a lot extra, that maybe don't require a lot of water and don't mind a lot of heat and dryness. And then planting other plants in the cool, shady, moister areas that like that. Um, Perhaps planting plants that block the wind from hitting your house if it's a cold winter wind or the hot summer winds, or designing your house so it is resistant to fire. So permaculture uses a close observation of the site to see what's the ecosystem about there, and then try to design something that works with that ecosystem. So it sounds kind of straightforward in a lot of ways, but most architecture, like landscape architects or architects, will design a system pretty much just asking the client, what do you want here? And the client can say whatever they want. They could say like, oh, I want it to be like a tropical home, that I have a house in Hawaii. I want it to look just like my house in Hawaii here in Southern California. Or um, lots of things. They could say, I want a lot of redwood trees because I love them, even though they're not at all adapted to our climate here, and it will take a ton of extra water, and they won't even look that good. So permaculture is actually a big divergence from the way a lot of design is done. Small farming design, landscape architecture, landscaping design, and even architectural design is often based on what people want, not what the ecosystem can support without a lot of inputs. So it's meant to integrate human and natural systems into a sustainable design, working with, not against, nature and the natural dynamics happening. Here's a short list of the natural dynamics that want to be observed and worked with on a site. The topography of the land, because that influences the hydrology, how the topography will influence a number of things. One is where the water goes. If the water hits on the tops of the hills, it's going to go to the valleys. That's how topography changes soil water moisture. You're going to have moisture soil in the valleys. Also, topography influences the way wind flows, and in that sense, it influences the way fire will move towards your site. And fire is a really important factor to build into a design here in southwestern United States. Also, topography affects the temperatures. If you are going to get a cold snap or maybe a frost, it's going to happen more dramatically in the low-lying areas rather than the hilltops or the hillsides. So when you're looking for macroclimates, microclimates, macro are big scale climate differences. Micro is kind of like I said earlier, like one side of the house that's north facing might be shadier and cooler and wetter, and the south side might be hotter and drier. Looking at the soil conditions and the natural patterning. What are natural patterns out there in nature and on the site that you might want to work with? So we'll talk a little bit more about that later. There are a number of different permaculture principles. You'll see different lists from different books, but here's some that I will explain to you. Practicing conservation. So when you are, let's say you are a permaculture designer and you are hired by a family here in Santa Barbara to create a permaculture yard. They want to change, it's all lawn and a couple of trees, and they want to do a permaculture design. Um, the first thing you'll do is talk to them about what they're interested in, and actually, the first thing you'll do is spend time looking at their site and observing it in the morning, noon, night, more than one type of weather condition. I mean, ideally, you could see it throughout an entire year, all the seasons, to really understand how the ecology of that site works. But probably you're just going to visit it a few times, and at least throughout the day, different times of the day. Um, and you're going to want to design thinking, okay, how can I create this design that gives these people some of the beauty they want, the functionality, meaning maybe they wanted to produce a lot of fruit and foods and vegetables, and they wanted to block some neighbor views for privacy, and they want to build the soil and have it be a place where um, like carbon dioxide or atmospheric carbon gets sequestered. They want to feel like they're doing something for climate change. All those things. You would think one of these principles you'd have in your mind is, okay, how can we do conservation here? And they might decide like, we want to do water conservation on our site. And so what are the ways we can conserve water while we're thinking of, the design? So these principles are brought into mind as the design is being thought and created. Valuing diversity and edges. Diversity of plant species is probably what this focuses on most. And you want to look at how many different species are there. You don't want a monocrop like a lawn. It'd be better to have a flower garden with lots of different plants and some native to bring in different pollinators, beneficial insects, and have more resistance to pests. We'll talk about edges a little bit later, maybe. Remind me. Oh, wait, this is a one-way lecture. Sorry. Another principle is reciprocity. meaning when you're designing the system, put two things together that help each other out. So, for an example, if you're going to have a compost area put into this design, and you also have a vegetable garden, it might be, or let's say chickens or rabbits. People, love chickens, or the fancy hipster thing to do right now. So you might want to put those close to each other because you're going to be taking um, manure out of the chicken coop and putting it into the compost pile. And you're also going to be taking um, like weeds and clippings, like green waste from the vegetable garden, and putting that in the compost pile. And then when the compost is done, you're going to put it back into the vegetable garden. So you want things that rely on each other, uh, close to each other. So that's reciprocity. And that's something to think about rather than having things kind of far apart that takes more time and energy to link them. Just one example of reciprocity. Many functions for each element, meaning an element is just kind of one object or little structure in a design. So an element could be a chicken coop, or it could be a raised bed, or a pond. Let's take pond for example. Instead of just having a pond that looks pretty because you like to look at water, you might say, well, let's have that pond also have some fish in it, and the fish maybe tilapia, so you can eat those fish. And also, you could grow blueberries around the edge of the pond. So the pond is serving a number of functions. It could be rainwater catchment off of a roof that fills the pond and it has fish in it. And you can also take out some of the mud off the bottom of the pond and use that on a garden bed because it's nutrient rich. So it has a number, that pond has a bunch of different functions. Hey, how you doing? Yes. Okay. I was, but I stopped when you came because I'm talking out loud. Yeah. It's going well. Haven't seen you early in here very much. Mm-hmm. Should be over there. Yeah. What time is it? I'm actually recording the permaculture lecture now. Just for intro. Yeah. Yeah. I'm almost. I was there yesterday for a while with Lewis, and I stopped by today for a little while this morning, and yesterday, the day before that. I looked all over. Yeah, just looked over the fence in it. Yeah. Cool. Yeah. You're getting near the end. Oh yeah. Oh yeah, that's cool. Good. But you got my. I think you responded to my text or email about after, like in the fall. Okay. And you were all. I don't. Did you ever get up? Were you ever on financial aid before? But but not while you were working for the department. I don't remember you ever being federal work study, but I kind of vaguely remember us talking about it once. Okay, before that, yeah. Yeah, that's the main thing. So, yeah, because I think I have it on, have you on this little district fund that's only like a couple of, I think, a couple of $1,000 in there. So I think that's, yes, what we were saying. Yeah, yeah, then what? Yeah, yeah, until then. in the spring when you teach.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
Cool. Yeah.
but yeah. So
Okay.
as long as you can get the federal work study,
Okay. Okay.
but
That
you
makes
feel
sense.
pretty confident about that, right?
Yeah. The getting that or the
Yes, being approved.
yeah. I
Yeah,
mean, it's based. It's mostly on just financial eligibility, right?
yeah, and you're not a dependent anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
you should be fine.
Yeah.
Yep. And Lewis is just gonna. Oh yeah, he's. Anyways, he's gonna be working a little bit more. He's doing a really good job, so
Yeah. I've been
that's
seeing
nice.
him just tackle a lot of the forest area.
Yeah, and we walked around the tropical section too, and what was because he just planted the bananas there. He was showing me where he
Yeah.
planted the bananas
That's great. I saw
and
that.
and what were we looking at that looked something. I don't know. He was turning on. Oh, I know. It's that section where we want to put the new valve. Like
Yeah.
that looked like we just well. There's it's a lemon guava. It's like looks like it's just completely dead. Like just in 1 month. Like it's just like has no leaves on it. It's it looks like that the path that has not. It's super overgrown now. That
Yeah.
little path.
Where the mango is.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
when you first enter that path from
From
like
like
the
the neighbors.
Mediterranean section,
Okay.
there's a big guava, a big old guava that's kind of right near where that drain is that we kind of started filling in.
Oh, is it like the Mexican apple cream guava?
Maybe, yeah.
Yeah. There's like three of them, and like kind
But
of
that one's the only one in that little corner of that bed.
got you next to like the the like
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. And it's
That
just
guy's struggling.
oh, it's just no leaves. It looks like it's
Okay.
dead, but we kind of chipped the bark. The little twigs are dead, but the branches seem to be alive. And we just thought maybe it hasn't gotten any water because we talked about the no pressure. And
Yeah.
I'm not really sure, but anyways, I told him he could fix a couple of things. He's going to be fiddling in that area with the irrigation to make sure that it at least has water.
Okay.
I don't know
Nice.
why though.
Yeah, I've been watering it weekly, and I walked through there like 2 weeks ago and fixed some emitters that had popped open. Um, but I don't know what's directly watering that.
That have you noticed that section? I mean, we turned it on and it was dribbling out, but there were two like things that had popped off. So there was some leaks, but
Yeah, but it still should be getting some water.
it's just I mean it died really. It's dying fast, so I don't really know.
Strange. Okay.
Anyway, we dug it out a little bit, but that's the only thing. I was just gonna wanted to let you know he's in there fiddling and
Okay,
maybe
great.
gonna do a little bit of that stuff. Yeah.
And then when I start, I'll just pick up where he left off, because that's when I intend to finish that line and plug and separate the two and put the far end on that new valve.
Hmm.
So we'll see wherever he does and go from there.
Alrighty.
Cool. All right.
Keep on.
Thank you.
Looks like you
Yeah.
got a haircut.
Yeah. I got a little haircut. I'm gonna be down below for a while, and then head out, and then I'll come down. So I'll be down there.
See ya whenever I see ya.
All right. Peace out.
Bye. Alrighty. Next would be many elements for each function. So, for example, let's say the function that you are trying to design is water conservation. You wouldn't just have water that comes from the city, um, and you try to, that's one way you're conserving it. Don't use too much water, take shorter showers, etc. Don't leave the water on while you're brushing your teeth. But also, you might have rain barrels for rain catchment off of your roof. You also might have that same pond as a water storage if it overflow from the rain barrels to store water for longer term. Um, you could also have a gray water system, and you can also mulch your soils and keep really thick, rich soils too, which that's one of the cheapest, best ways to store water is in the soil. So there's a number of different elements for water conservation and storage, that function. Catching and storing energy, of course, catch as much of the energy that comes to the site, mostly solar energy, could be wind energy. Also, energy is in water, energy is in the soil. So any way you can hold on to the energy of that site and build it, rather than bring new stuff in, the more the better. Maybe solar could be too, but remember, plants are the original solar panels. They collect solar energy, make carbohydrates, and those can be used in a lot of things, not to mention just soil. We can eat some of the plants for food, but they can also be used for livestock fodder and for soil building. Um, so, and for construction. So they really are the original solar panel that takes in real-time solar energy and converts it to biomass. Also, appropriate scale is another design principle of permaculture, designing a system that's in the same scale as the environment. So if you build things really out of scale, big, if you had a really huge home or big home or a big pond or too big of a chicken coop, you're going to get more waste and probably need more inputs than that plot can handle. So you're trying to build it to scale with what's available within that site, so you don't have to bring in too many inputs and don't have too much waste. Here's a example of reciprocity. Back to the banana circle that I talked about in the last lecture. And this is an example of the bananas are growing right by the green waste and the place where the water goes down in the hole in the center. So they're getting their water and they're getting their nutrients more readily available from this configuration of a banana circle. Um, so your green waste goes in the center, feeds the bananas, and the bananas benefit from it. So they're reciprocal. The green waste compost pile in the middle is giving to the bananas, and the banana leaves and things can give back. And they're you don't have to like haul the green waste from one place to another as much. You can just use the green waste just from this banana circle to feed the center. So it kind of closes the loop. This has a number of functions: water retention, soil retention, food production, mulch building. It conserves water and soil, catches a lot of energy in one area. Bananas can be grown in this area. This was a picture from Guatemala, so we grew other things: yucca, sweet potato, things that were more tropical here. You could think of a local example. We do cannas and bananas together, the canna banana circle, and all the green waste goes into the center and feeds them once again.